Hi, Tom. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you.
It's nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Before we get started, I'd like to just review a little bit about what we discussed in the first session together and highlight some of the key points we discussed in our last session.
Okay.
I know that you have recently been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, and you have a few concerns regarding your disorder, such as insomnia and your racing mind and your constant worry about raising your children as a single father. I know that you sought services through community mental health to help manage an unwanted behavior of being verbally aggressive with your boys when you feel that your anxiety has peaked and has reached its maximum and you just can't take anymore, that you feel that you are, have been short-tempered with the boys and verbally aggressive with them, and you're in search of a more positive, productive way of communicating with the boys, and maybe searching out ways to cope with some of that anxiety and have a better outlet for some of the anxiety you feel. Is that about right?
Yeah, I'm really wanting to focus on calming myself, and responding in a better, more calm manner when I communicate with my two sons. I feel I've been a little aggressive and loud, and I tend to yell.
All right. Well, a few weeks ago, I gave you a homework assignment. I wanted you to keep track of the moments that you felt that you were the most verbally aggressive with the boys, or when you had, a short temper with your boys, if there was a pattern to this behavior. And is there anything you discovered? Is there a time you felt that you were more verbally abusive than other times?
Definitely. I feel it's right when I'm home from work. Is probably, like you said, most aggressive time. And
What is it about this time? What is it about right when you get home from work?
we seem to have fallen into a pattern. And I usually come home from work and I'm stressed. I'm happy to be done with the day, but slightly overwhelmed knowing that I'm ending one job and starting the next. The boys almost every day meet me at the door. And then I feel slightly bombarded. I feel that they just kind of rush me, both with questions and vying for attention. And when they do that, they start arguing them between the two of them. And that seems to be one of my triggers. And when that sets me off, I seem to start yelling as my main form of communication and getting across to them.
What is it you yell about? Anything in particular?
Gosh, it does. It seems like sometimes I don't even remember. I think it's anything and everything. I think it's for them to quiet down, for them to get along, maybe for them to give me some space. Um, I yell for probably, it seems, in about the 5 minute range. Um, but when it's starting to calm down, I can already see that the boys are kind of on their heels. And I feel like it's kind of too late to start something positive at that time because the environment has kind of already been ruined, and I feel I probably was a major thing. And it makes me feel horrible.
Gotcha.
And I think the boys, they feel bad, they feel miserable when that happens. And that's what I'm looking to change.
Okay. Well, what I would like to do with you in this session, with your permission, is work with a technique called cognitive behavioral therapy. Have you heard of this technique before?
No.
Okay. Well, let's discuss it for a few minutes. I'll educate you on the therapy so you can give your informed consent or permission to use this type of therapy if you think you can benefit from it. The underlying assumption of cognitive behavioral therapy is that there is a connection between what we think and what we feel and then how we behave. So you can't separate our thoughts from our feelings from our behaviors. So if there is a behavior, an unwanted, undesirable behavior, in order to correct that behavior, we first must pay attention to the thoughts and feelings that precede that behavior, that unwanted behavior. And only by bringing that thought that precedes that behavior into our conscious awareness, are we able to change that thought into a more positive, productive thought, which of course will affect the way we feel, thus affect the outcome, which is the behavior. It will affect it and hopefully produce a more positive, productive behavior. So does that sound like something you'd like to try? Kind of trace your thought pattern of how you feel when you first get home from work?
I think it's a good idea. That's the time that I feel I have the most issue.
Okay. Well, what I'm going to do is use also something called a cognitive triangle. And all this is going to do is give you a visual representation of connecting your thoughts and your feelings and your behavior. So with this triangle, I'm going to put a T up here for thoughts, an F down here for feelings, and a V right here for behavior. So right now you can see how they all feed into each other. It's like a circular pattern with no beginning and end, except for it's a triangle instead. Okay. So let's talk about your thoughts first. When you get home after a busy day of work and you're exhausted and tired and you're just about ready to open that door knowing what is waiting for you on the other side. Your children, full of all this extra energy and wanting to get your attention. So what are your thoughts in that moment?
I'm probably most of the time a little anticipative and thinking, why can't I come home and there be some peace and quiet and some time to just kind of relax?
Okay. So your thought is, why can't I come home to peace and quiet?
Yeah.
Okay. And when you think, why can't I come home to peace and quiet, how does this make you feel? What feelings does this produce within you?
Probably the first one is angry, and I'm frustrated, angry, and anxious about the situation. But probably the first one that leads is I'm angry.
Angry. Okay, so when you come home and you think, why can't I ever come home to peace and quiet? You feel angry and anxious. And when you feel angry and anxious, what is the outcome of these feelings? What do you do with these feelings? What's the next action?
Probably the action is my behavior when I start yelling.
Yelling is the behavior. Okay, so Michael, if you were to look at this cognitive triangle, do you see the connectiveness between your thought pattern, how that feeds into negative feelings, and thus feeds into negative behavior?
I do.
Okay. So let's think of this as the old way of thinking, and let's create a new pattern of thinking and bring in a different thought into our awareness. So once again, same triangle with thoughts, feelings, and behavior. And before we talk about thoughts, let's talk about how is it you think your children feel before you get home, before they know you're about ready to open that door? We've talked about how you feel. How do you think your children anticipate you coming home from work?
Well, I'm sure they're anxious and excited, explain what they've seen and learned from the day. And I'm sure they miss me. And this is their chance to talk with Dad. So that's probably where their thought basis is coming from.
Sure. And you had mentioned earlier that you feel that they start arguing as well. And I think you nailed it when you said earlier, a lot of that arguing is to get your attention. It's a way for a child to get the parent's attention, and especially after not seeing you all day, they're very excited to share their day's events with you. And if they feel that the one child is getting your attention, one way to pull that attention away from that child onto themselves is to start complaining or start arguing,
Oh, yeah. I can see a connection there too.
Okay, so if you then came home from work and before you entered the house, thought about what we just discussed, how your children feel about you entering that house, how they have a different thought process than you. But if you were to consider their feelings and thoughts before you, in anticipation of you coming home from work, does that change the way you would think about opening that door? Like, what would your thought process be then?
That they're excited to see me, so I should be happy.
Excited to see you would be their thought or your thought that they're excited to see you. Anything else?
And that they miss me.
Missed you, yeah, very much so. They're excited to tell their dad about their day. So knowing that your children are excited to see you and share with you, everything they've learned in the day, and excited to see their father and bond with their father, does that change the way you feel?
Yeah.
Would that change the way you felt about walking in and having them right there, wanting your attention?
I understand it better already. I think it would bring about a sense of pride and understanding that they want to communicate with me, and that they're, and that in turn makes me happy.
Okay. So thinking your children just can't wait to see you and to share their day with you, to make you proud, that internally produces feelings of you being happy and proud as their father. Now feeling that way, feeling happy and proud, do you feel that you would communicate with them in a different way at that time? What would be the outcome of feeling happy and proud?
I can see it being a more gentle style of communication, first off. I would approach it calmer, and I would approach it mentally from a completely different angle. And not only understanding, the environment, but also a little more looking at them and what they're trying to communicate to me, and that would make me proud, and I think that it would help me not yell. I think I could approach it quieter and calmer.
Okay, so if you look at this then, and you see the connection between the old way of thinking and the new, more productive way of thinking, feeling, and thus behaving, do you think this is something you could practice at home with your boys?
Very much so. I think it's something that the boys could understand as well.
Okay, what I would like you to do then, Michael, well, first we need a baseline to see where the behavior currently is. So 5 days, you work 5 nights a week?
5 nights. Yeah.
Okay, of those 5 nights, how many nights would you say you result to being verbally aggressive with your boys?
On an average, I would say probably 3 nights a week.
Okay, so I want you to keep track of trying this new approach with your changing your thoughts before you enter your home, and see if that has an effect on your feelings and behavior. And we can measure effectiveness through a decrease in the unwanted behavior and an increase in a more productive way of communicating with your children.
That sounds great.
Any questions for me?
No, I don't.
All right, see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.